Good morning, everyone, and I'm so glad to see so many of you over here battling the rain and monsoon and still be here on time. At least I am battling because I'm still new to Bombay, so I don't know what kilometers and hours, how to coordinate that and integrate that in my day, but trying my best. Very happy for the entire team to organize this and to see like-minded folks in this room. I know we have an agenda packed, so I'll straight away go into the today's discussion. To begin with, a short introduction of myself. I am Priyankar. My pronouns are he and him. I work for City India. Been with City for over 6 years. Moved to Bombay a year, less than a year. My day job is to do risk and compliance work. But what I do over and beyond my day job is I look after the Pride Network for City India, and that's the passion and that's the fun element I bring along with my work. With me, I have an amazing panelist who has joined today, and why don't I pass the mic and request them to introduce themselves? Yeah, starting from my left. Yeah.
Well, good morning, all. Pleasure and privilege being here. Uh, Sanjeev Lahiri, uh, 25 years plus in the profession. However, what I do currently, I work with an organization which is called GRP Limited, which is the largest recycler of rubber, plastic, and is also a big name in the polymer compounding. When I say largest, it's largest on the planet. So, so that's basically representing the sector of sustainability. However, as a topic of this panel, DEI is very, very close to heart because it has an opportunity to work with people across the world, various types of human beings across the world. That makes it really, really interesting. So, I'm here to network and more importantly, learn from all of us. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Whom do I pass the mic now? Any choice? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bhagwati Shetty. I'm the Group HR Business Partner at Mahindra. I also lead D&I for corporate. Some of you may have heard about the fire maternity policy that we rolled out at Mahindra, which has been a huge thing for the manufacturing sector. That's something that I worked on. That's me. I'm a mother of two children. That's the part that I love talking about the most. And a lot of work that I do around D&I comes from a space of personal lived experience, as I like to call it. I've worked across manufacturing, IT, telecom, financial service industries. And I love working with leaders to help them identify and drive their people priorities. What I'm most passionate about is creating inclusive workspaces for employees. Yeah, so that's me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Richa. My pronouns are she, they. I think when we're trying to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think as what Bhagwati was saying, I also use a lot of my lived experiences. So I'm a queer person, non-binary, neurodivergent, and I just feel that my experiences in the hard way have really helped me and made me understand a lot about how to navigate any kind of space. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm a psychologist by profession, so anything that I will be talking about today is psychological safety and mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm feeling a little pressure over here with such a august panelist with me, but I'm given the easiest job today. So, and I will try not to ask hard questions, but let's see. Okay. So today we heard a lot about the term diversity, equity, and inclusion. Something which beyond folks in HR perhaps wants to know or try to understand that why are we talking so much of DEI? Is it really a need of an organization or is just a good thing to have? And I would like all of your perspective on this because most of you are from HR. I am not. It's a difficult job for me, at least, not being in HR, but to still convince others that DEI is not a good thing but a must have. It should be part of our KRI and DNA. But what is your perspective? Should I start with you, Rajiv?
Okay, see, it can sound like a very selfish answer for an HR professional, um, and not from an HR professional, even from a business perspective. Businesses are nothing without people, and people, okay, people equal to talent, if I may put it that way. So the question that I've always asked, that why should something which is not related to talent come in that decision? I think if we're able to answer this question, most of our troubles will be sorted, if I may. Uh, at times when we when we tend to take, say, recruitment decisions, no, this person stays so far. This lady is unmarried. This lady is just married, right? So therefore, something may happen, something may not happen. Who are we to decide, right? This person doesn't look like us. This person does not speak our language. Why should this come in? And so on and so forth. So I think the canvas is as white as we may want to paint it, very honestly. Uh, therefore, put in care, KRIs, create policies, end of the day, I think open up our minds, all of us, and the business environments that we are able to influence. I think that is going to be the only call answer, call solution to DI. So if I have to really pick one, good to have or must have, there's no question. It is a must have. Rather, I mean, I don't know, college should have, but I think this is. I mean, I really can't pick an answer to this. I mean, this is as simple as the five fingers of the hand is not same. It's as simple as that. I think we need to understand.
Thanks, Rajiv. Sorry, Sanjeev. I'll dwell on the point that it's just like five fingers on the hand. But if it is really five fingers on the hand, why is it so difficult for everyone else to understand that? Any thoughts on it? Anyone?
I think we're conditioned in a way that we start seeing the differences later on in life. As children, they don't see it. I was having an interesting chat with my 6-year-old last evening, and I was telling him that Mama's going to talk about her work, and then I'm flying for some workshop. He said, "What are you going to talk about?" And I said, well, it's a discussion around why we should have people in different sizes, shapes, and forms for him to understand easily. He said, that's a very silly conversation to have. Isn't it obvious? And then I said, why? So his response was, does it really matter how different people are? So for a child, they're very inclusive. They don't think that there are any differences in people around them. With social conditioning, with what we keep hearing over the time, I think we start noticing, looking at differences, and we tend to gravitate towards people who are like us. So someone who reminds us of our early years, either when we started our career or when we were growing up, you tend to pick people who are similar. So that's an unconscious bias there. I think that's what I feel is the reason mostly.
Great. So you see the next generation is more inclusive than what we are? Is it?
Yeah, if we nurture that bit,
Okay.
if
Okay.
we as their parents, their guardians, keep on having these conversations and
Yeah.
let them believe that that is what it is.
Yeah.
Until then, DNI is what we'll have to.
So we have a responsibility when we go back home. We have to instill that culture and promote that. Thank you so
It
much.
starts at home.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else to add on that?
So, Sanjeev, I just wanted to take on what you were sharing. You said that people equal to talent. And I want to challenge you there. That's what we do as psychologists. We bring about uncomfortable conversations. And this is something that I have observed is that as a psychologist in our space, we keep using something called as a humanistic approach in our work. What that means is that you look at the person as a whole. When we're saying people equal to talent, human equal to talent, we're saying that the person is only relevant if they have talent, right? But I feel like the person is so much more than their talent. Like I got up this morning and I was feeling very gloomy. Like it took me a lot of effort to reach here. And then I checked my calendar and I realized that my menstrual cycle is 1 week away. So I'm basically PMSing at this moment. I have to come here with a smile on my face, which means that I'm masking. Very important concepts to keep in mind when we're trying to talk about psychological safety within the workspace. We have to come and we have to smile, we have to be presentable, we have to completely always sell ourselves that yes, I have done this, yes, I'm available, yes, I'm going to be like present. But I think what's also important when we're trying to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion is that are we mindful that what are the struggles people are experiencing? Are we mindful that what kind of homes people are coming from? What is the kind of challenges people are facing? We live in a country where mental health is considered a huge taboo. If I talk about what my neurodivergence means, it's going to be very difficult. Was diagnosed with ADHD, were diagnosed with BPD, a lot of things that we might not even understand. But with all of these identities, I go into a workspace, right? And I am a part of a workspace. So I would say that a human being is so much more, and we need to be able to work with the human being. We need to come use a very humanistic lens in the kind of work that we're doing so that we are respecting people and accepting people as they come. And I think we need to be a little more mindful. We need to learn what it means to be patient with somebody who's just gotten up feeling very gloomy.
Thanks, Richa. That's a great perspective. And I guess what I'm hearing from this panel is how we can create a safe space in our workplace through DEI so that all of us can bring our authentic self to work. So that even if I am gloomy today, I don't have to put on a facade, an artificial me in my workplace. I can be vulnerable, and my supervisors can perhaps respect that and understand that. Not that it will, not that it should impact my work, but at least supervisor understands and have a healthy conversation with that resource, so that that person feels safe at the workplace, right? With that, I have. Kind of a number question over here, and I'll go back to the goals and values we have in our organization, and perhaps I'll start with you. We all have organizational values, right? And then we have our DEI charter. Do you see that those two can get integrated and can speak to each other, or it has to be always separate, and or there is this opportunity to bring them together for the betterment of the organization as a whole?
Well, great question, Priyanka. See, um it. First, let me ask you. I'll tell you. I'll share my experience with you. But first, let me ask. What do you think values are? Any quick answer, audience? What are values? Organizational self. What? Beliefs. Yes. Organizations want to inculcate in the employees, or organizations want to live by. Exactly. So, for me, a very simple um, definition of values is what I value is my value. Right? What is important to me, what is non-negotiable for me, equal to an organization as well. That's the value. Right? How can it be different if say the DI charter is important for the organization? It can't be. And values are whatever is written on the walls. I know organizations spend a hell lot of money to beautify their walls and billboards, but what we experience from an organization, that actually defines the value, right? If an organization says that, say, customer centricity, one of those jargons that we keep on seeing. However, as a customer, I don't feel that. Nobody picks my call, nobody responds to me, and my problems never get solved. Do we really believe that do we really feel that this organization lives that value? Does not work. I'll just come on to what we did, a little experience sharing over here. Now, as an organization, for us, we have 7 manufacturing plants, and remember the field that I belong to is sustainability, is recycling. The type of people that I have are very, very humble, maybe from the lowest, I don't want to put it in hierarchy, but for want of a better word, starter of the society. At times, certain communities don't do that job. वो कचरे का काम कौन कौन करेगा? So, but they are the most important people for me, for my organization to run. Okay. Uh, so as there are these certain types of communities, these communities comes with their own called beliefs, called taboos. Okay, so they will not work with some other people. They will not. They will. I mean, they won't at times allow the women from the home to work. Now, as an organization, and just coming on to Rich, I did not mean that anybody who does not have talent is not wanted in the organization. But yeah, no, that was not the meaning. But okay, so Here, if I have to run the organization and if I look for people who are from the other parts of the country or from any other community, the whole DEI space comes into there. Nobody is going to even accept that person. Nobody is going to even work with that person. So is that not DEI? Understanding this, and as we are really growing fast and growing fast across the world, we saw that this is one of the biggest roadblocks to our growth the way we want. I'll tell you, when I joined this organization, now, okay, my promoters, my management, they speak Gujarati. The next layer speaks Marathi. I speak neither. I understand it though. Okay, so I was asked by quite a few of my colleagues, "How are you here?" Me at my level, because the lingua franca in the meetings is either Gujarati or Marathi. Okay. Now, in a particular business, here I am getting people who are coming in from Orissa, coming in from Assam, coming in from even South. Uh, how do I integrate them in my management team at the first place? Forget anything else. Right? So, all of these, then comes the whole women factor and other factors. So I have a big LGBT population around the places of my factories. Today, unfortunately, okay, that's my next target. I cannot take them in, and I know that if I'm able to maybe get people from there to run my lines, it's a very basic training, but and they can do it. If I get them in, I will not face the issue of absenteeism that I face today, at times, seasonal or whatever. But can I take them in? No. What we did, therefore, is one of our values. So, okay, we are in our Golden Jubilee, 50th year. Just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated. We did an entire recast exercise of our vision and values. The first value that comes is prioritizing dignity. And that is where, and then we have kept, basically laid down the behaviors. Those behaviors we have now linked with our competencies. Okay? And we have introduced competencies and behaviors even at the worker levels. So every worker will now get rated on that. Let's see first year of experiment, but similar thing in my earlier organizations with people from across the world and with gender identities from across the world give me success. So help me God.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad that you are bringing in that cultural change in the organization. And I think a lot of work has to be done with starting from a socialization. And I guess a lot of folks come with a set of beliefs, and those beliefs need to be challenged and educated. And when there is a merit to do that, I think they will also accept. So I think it's a walk the talk, and I'm glad you're walking that talk. Um, Moving on to the next part of this question is, okay, we have organizational values, we are trying to integrate it with DI values, but today's generation, uh, uh, they all hold a smartphone. So am I, not that I'm a very young individual, but they're always hooked to social apps, looking at brands in LinkedIn, Instagram, and so on and so forth. Do you think there is a need to advocate an organizational DI value in our brand messaging? Because a lot of folks, not only externally, I work for a global bank, believe you me, a lot of people reach out to me through LinkedIn rather than on my Teams message app, right? And that's why, because we have been vocal, visible. Do you think that it's important, and if it is, what should be the brand message with respect to DI values?
Right. So may I
Yeah.
answer that? All right. So yes, of course, there should be a linkage. Internal values have to reflect in your brand messaging. If you'd ask me why, the response is very clear. It acts as a great talent magnet for your organization. It builds your brand reputation. And third, it builds connection with your audience, which is not just your talent segment, but also your customers. So let's take an example. I'm scrolling through my social feed, I'm looking at my LinkedIn, and I come across a job listing which has this amazing picture of a diverse team which is working in a collaborative space that gets my attention. And then I read about the job description, which also talks about the effort the organization takes in creating an inclusive workspace. Now that's a win. And for the generation that you're referring to, for them it's very important to just look at organizations that are a reflection of the real world, but also serve a larger purpose which goes above and beyond. So they're looking for those things, right? And that builds an instant connection. So yeah, I feel these are the things that are very important at Mahindra. Our purpose, which is Rise for an Equal World, it isn't just a slogan. We take conscious efforts in making that a reality through our work around our work around building a diverse and inclusive workspace. And I was just thinking about the 3 pillars that we've called out, which is linked with our DNI framework. It is head, heart, and hands. We've simplified it so easily. So head is all our initiatives around leadership interventions, which is hiring gender at this stage, which is what we're focusing on at leadership levels, having immersion conversations, building role models, having interventions that build talent in the organization. That's your head or leadership interventions. Then hand is all the work that you do around structural initiatives. So whether it's infrastructure, so gender neutral washrooms, infrastructure audits, accessibility, not just physically, but IT accessibility as well. And last is social, which is your sensitization work around unconscious bias, allyship, driving ERGs. And we have 2 ERGs that we are most proud of. One is for women, we call it the Women-Led Network, and the second one is for Pride. So Rise with Pride is what we call. And we do some amazing work, and the ERGs are led by the community members themselves. They focus on initiatives around development, wellness, networking. So targeted work happens around it. And I think all of that, when it goes out on the social media, it just is a great magnet, like I said. And like City, we also keep getting a lot of messages from people who want to join an organization which is so progressive, which is so thoughtful, and working consciously with the heart in the right place when it comes to D&I.
Agree. I guess what we all are trying to say over here is to create a sense of belongingness. The folks who have perhaps not joined the organization yet, or to give them the confidence, even to the internal employees who are looking at our posts on social media, that they are in a place where the organization believes to make that ecosystem comfortable for them, so that their output is not compromised, and they can live around and live and work, and that integration can happen peacefully. Moving on, I guess this question is more from your lens, Richa, that we have been talking about attracting talent, right? Attracting in an inclusive space. But is that the end? Or how do we ensure, from your lens, that that talent can thrive in an organization and we don't lose out on talent? Because I understand, being myself a people manager, that it takes a lot of time, effort, and resources to hire a talent, and we don't want that talent to go away. It's a loss for the organization. How do we do that, and is it needed?
You use the word thrive. And as a psychologist, we don't like this word. I feel like it's such a pressure. You know, every day you have to come to work and you have to thrive. Like, if you're not thriving today, you're not really good enough. You're not doing a great job. So I run a company called Leher Mental Health, which means wave. And when we speak to companies, we speak about how there are high tides and there are low tides. It can't always be neutral, right? Like, there are going to be days where you're going to be able to like perform a lot more, but there are going to be days where thrive as a concept is not going to come to you naturally. And as much as you want to really push yourself, that's not going to happen. So I think when we're trying to talk about, like, we spoke about hiring, so some really great points about it, but we also need to talk about retention. And while we talk about retention, we need to talk about how are we meeting people midway instead of expecting the employees. You know, I think there was one term in between that was used, that expecting, like, yes, I have my issues, but you have to work with them. You still have to be able to perform. I don't think that is called meeting people midway. If I'm really, really struggling, am I still expected to give something in that particular day? Is there any kind of leeway, or is there any bracket in between that is offering some amount of support to me as an employee? When we're trying to talk about retention, we need to speak about employee benefits which are focusing on mental health. When you mention hand, head, and heart, I was actually thinking about all of it from a mental health aspect. Like hand, head, and heart, all of it I feel is very important in psychological safety. Hand, I feel, is like our somatic responses, how we are responding within a workspace. Our head and our heart, like our nervous system, all of these things are a part of a company. All of this, like a human being, an employee is going to a workspace with all of these aspects. We need to think about like ERGs, infrastructure, all of these points I feel need to be taken a few steps ahead. I'd gone to a company, I'm not going to name it, and I wanted to use the gender neutral washroom. Since a non-binary person, I was like, oh, I have the opportunity, let me use it. So the housekeeping staff was standing outside and they stopped me. They said, "आप ये वाला washroom मत use करो, आप वो वाला washroom use करो." They pointed me towards the women's washroom. I feel like when we're creating a gender neutral washroom, everybody also needs to be trained that why are we doing this? What is the purpose behind it? We're always training, sensitization is at like top level, employees, but we're also forgetting like a housekeeping staff, for example. They are not understanding ये DEI क्या है, ये क्या हो रहा है, इतना rainbow क्यों है everywhere, like why are we doing all this? So I think if we are looking at a holistic approach, that is very important, right? Like when we're talking about retention, I feel again from a company standpoint, if we're having people who are coming in after pregnancy, what support are we offering to new mothers? What support are we offering to new fathers? Everything is generally so gendered in nature. We're only focusing on the women. But what about the men? Then is this expectation that, sorry, as a man, I can't do much, so then I won't be able to offer much at home as well. So I think we need to look at things from like beyond gender, beyond sexuality, beyond language, and look at things from a larger human, like a larger holistic approach.
Thanks, Richa. I just want to add one example over there, and it was a learning for me. So last year, when I was conducting a Pride town hall in my office, in my headquarters, and a extremely senior person was visiting. So obviously, when a senior person comes, we go all out, right? We were putting up the Pride flags. This was early in the morning. Ground staff was helping me. Two of them asked me, "Sir, आज कौन सा match है?" And I was like, "Wow." Right, and that is where I echo with you that when a trans individual walks into our campus, walks into first day, gets into the reception, what is the visual behavior that person gets? And I think that's where our work has to be also, which I admit we haven't done much, but we are open to the opportunity to do that, because that's how we do integrate values from folks who may not be in our payroll as well, right? But they are creating an experience for our employees. And see how diverse this panel is. I love the way Richa credibly challenges us. And I would refrain using the word thrive going forward. But that's what, diversity brings to any conversation, any work. My next question, Bhagwati, perhaps it's to you, that we use the term, at least from a business perspective, return on investments a lot. What is the ROI on our DEI work, and how do we put it in a beautiful deck to show our leaders that, well, these are the key matrix, and we are doing well or we are doing bad? How do we determine that?
Right. So that's a conversation I used to have way back, not anymore. But yeah, determining ROI on DNA efforts is very challenging. You can't do that. But you can look at a few set of matrix which will give you immense insights. Let me start with your representation. So how's your representation for your diverse groups across levels? Where are you doing good? Where do you need to do more focused interventions? Do you need to look at outreach programs? Do you need to adopt schools? All of those things, right? And that we do very extensively at plant level, at our corporate offices. The second thing that we look at is our listening forums. What are our employees saying when we do our engagement surveys, the FGDs, the pulse checks? That gives you a good view of how your employees feel about belonging to the organization. So that's a good mechanism. The third one that you can look at is your attrition rates across diverse groups again. So that tells you where do you need more focus interventions around inclusion. What is the pain point? And the last one that I want to talk about is your promotion or progressions across the organization. You want to see that everybody is getting an equal opportunity to have a career, they're growing. So all of this is a good representation of your efforts around D&I. And if your focus is too narrow, if you're looking to at this year, next year, 3 years, 4 years, you may not be as consistent. And that seems to have a more detrimental effect in the long run. So yeah, D&I is something that you invest for the future, and the metrics are a good measure of how you're doing. Are the efforts kind of paying off? And then, of course, a leadership which takes accountability very seriously. Like at Mahindra, we have a 10% weighted goal that all leaders take up on inclusion. So accountability then further helps you drive it. It's not an agenda that HR has to drive, that a D&I lead has to drive. It has to be owned by the leadership. And when that starts happening, you start seeing the results.
Great points. Sanjeev, anything else to add on that?
So, absolutely brilliant points, Bhagwati. See, the other point is that before creating a matrix or looking at the ROI, I will really ask the question of why. Why are we doing it, and so diversity. How are we defining it for our organization? Is it only gender, or is it only like for us in GRP? Uh, while gender is in gender, we are focusing at this point in time clearly on women, because manufacturing, we know the reality. Manufacturing has one of the lowest representation of women on the shop floor. I'm trying to build that on one. Second is the as a part of a signatory of the UNWEP, one of the targets we have taken very consciously, and of course seriously, is that how are we generating entrepreneurship in women and in, once again, LGBTQI groups. So proud to say, when we had started this journey 3 years back, our sourcing, and sourcing means any kind of sourcing, from including using consultants, right, from the non-men groups, if I may, was less than 1%. Today I stand at 15. The target taken, and this is the global average. The target is to get to 30 by 2025. So fingers crossed. Let's see. So I think some of these things, if you are able to first define, put in what you are measuring, and of course why you are measuring, and then start monitoring it, success is bound to come. And everything is not on the ROI; it is probably the progression that you have made.
Thank you so much. I guess each one of us have the responsibility to be a change maker over here, and how we clearly convince and put forward our, the benefits of DEI, and I think that is when people will accept it. And I think each business leader has to then take the ownership, and it's not only a HR departments or DEI organizations' responsibility. Richa, to you, what are the, you see opportunities or the benefits from your lens in having a DI integrated organization?
Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody a question, and some of us may shy away from answering it, and feel free to. That's okay. How many of us has actually gone to a psychologist? How many of us have gone to a psychologist? ठीक है. Very few people actually put their hands up in the room for two reasons. One, we are not comfortable sharing with everybody else. Second, we've actually never gone to a mental health professional. And surveys actually suggest, so the work that we try to do with companies, so we're a very small company right now. I'm a very young entrepreneur. And the work that we try to do with companies is that not more than 2 to 3% of employees actually reach out to a mental health professional, even if there's an EAP on board. That's the reality right now in this country, because we're just like, why should we go to a mental health professional? Like, remember I spoke about how as a country, it's still considered a taboo. So if I go to a psychologist within a company, I will feel that my job is at a threat. I will feel that if I go and talk to a psychologist hired by the same company, the psychologist will then go and speak to the manager and say, "अरे इसके तो बहुत problems है, इसको निकाल दो ये job से." That's a real concern that a lot of employees have. So a lot of people would not go to an EAP provider, would rather go to a private practitioner because they're concerned that if they talk about their concerns, they would be asked to leave, or they would be put on like some probation or something. And I think then as a company, we need to be able to do a lot more sensitization and programs to introduce what it means to be a safe company in terms of psychological safety, in terms of mental health. Why are we having such initiatives? Why do we want that the percentage increases from a 2 to 3% to like a 30%? And one thing I think that leaders can do is go to a therapist. If you ever questioned that, oh, do I need to go to a therapist? Then yes, the answer is yes. If you're thinking about it, then you definitely are, it might be a good idea to go to a therapist. As leaders, if we are talking about how okay it is to go to therapy, people within the team are also going to feel like, अच्छा अगर मेरा boss जा सकता है तो मैं सोच सकती हूँ इसके बारे में. I can think about it. I feel that's where DEI integration can be important within a company, mainly from a mental health point of view, right? I'm not talking about queer rights over here, even though I'm a queer person. Right now, I feel my mental health within the workspace is very important just because of what a company is expecting from me, right? The kind of work we try to do with companies, it's very difficult for somebody who has been living with depression for years. How they're expected to thrive in a particular company, how they're expected to match up all their KPIs, ROIs. Like these discussions are very interesting, but ask somebody with depression how they're actually able to fulfill this. So I think when we spoke about pulse checks, when we spoke about listening circles, we need to also talk to people from, I would say, people who are living with mental health concerns, although it's going to be difficult because not everybody is comfortable to talk about it within a workspace, mainly for the reason that my job will not be secure here. A lot of people within companies have this question, do you live with a mental health issue when you're hiring somebody? I know a lot of HR people ask this question. Nobody is ever going to answer that. Nobody is going to answer it because I don't trust a company to be able to be, I'm not sure that you're going to hire me for that reason. So it's also very important for us to understand why are we asking these questions? Are we really expecting honest replies? If yes, then what are we doing in terms of the messaging? What are we doing in terms of psychological safety? So I think a lot really needs to happen. We can all start with understanding mental health as a space that is accessible to all of us. Most big companies have an EAP provider. We don't even know the name. We don't even know kya services wo offer karte hai. When there are workshops that are held for companies, not more than 5-6 people turn up. It really depends. So I think as a company, whether it's the top management, middle management, everybody needs to work together, right? Like it takes a village, we say. It takes a village. If you want to bring about change, it's definitely going to take a village. So every person in this room is responsible to be able to make that change. That's it.
Thank you so much. I guess we need to create that confidentiality, and the leaders have to be empathetic, and we need to ensure that the conversations happening with EAP doesn't go into the scorecards, because we don't tell in our appraisals that how many times we went to our doctors to get ourselves treated. So that shouldn't be part of our scorecards as well. I know Asif is looking at me and he's keeping a time check. So perhaps a last question to this panel. Um, what do you think is the biggest challenge you see in the integration of DEI in your organization or in the industry?
So, we are not clear about really what to do. Um, Other organizations are doing this, so let us do this, right? People are doing Pride, so let us do Pride and get the same kind of experiences that Richa said. Is one. I think it is all about opening up the mindset to be understanding, right? The other point that I also just want to bring up, just let us be open. Let us really look at the job roles that we need people, and let us not get constrained with the history or the situation of the person. Let us just see if the person is willing to is if the person is fit for the job role. By all means, hire the person, right? I think, and once again, it's not about HR. I mean, in certain interviews, we also get to know. For example, even at this, currently, not so long ago, somebody was speaking to me, a very senior person, asking me about my dietary habits, okay, and thereafter on my drinking habits. I said, excuse me, is that to do anything with my job? And I refused to answer. Trust me, it was not a job interview. The person had reached out to me just to see if I'm willing to, and these questions came up. I said, excuse me, I'm not talking on this. So I think it is about to be able to open all our minds. The biggest problem, I think, is in each and every individual's mind. It and it from an organization's leadership has a big role to A, live by example, and B, take the whole concept of DI away from the scorecards and the checkboxes. I think till the time that happens, these forums will happen.
Bhagwati, would you like to add something?
Yeah. So I was going to say unconscious bias, and thank you for sharing that example. That's an unconscious bias that'll get created. If you would have answered that question, there would have been an automatic response in the person's mind who was assessing. So it does come in the way of hiring decisions, performance assessments. When you're taking that call, who's ready, who's not. Oh, she's a mother, she's got a young child, maybe she might not be ready. So that is where sensitization comes in the picture, which is where we educate our employees through ongoing conversations. It's not a one-time conversation. You have to build on it, right? That's when we talk about ask versus assume. Don't assume on someone's behalf. Ask. Does the person need support? Is the person ready for the next role? Right? So those are the conversations that we have. We also talk a lot about equity versus equality, right? So often in traditional organizations, you'll hear, why do you want to create something specifically for a demographic? Why not for everyone? It's not fair. They fail to understand that equity is different from equality. For everyone to have the same starting point, you'll have to look at equitable solutions so that everybody gets that starting point, right? There's a very famous example of giving a bicycle to a child, to an adult, to a differently abled person. They can't be expected to ride that same bicycle the same way. It has to be tailor-made for every person's need. That is where equity is coming in. So these are the conversations I feel come in the way, and when you educate people through ongoing conversations, it opens up their mind. And that's where you start making progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess you would like to add something, Richa? Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, so quickly, I think one thing that I can think about is this concept called passing the mic. I feel it's very important that we pass the mic to the right people. So, for example, we're looking at a maternal policy. I feel like somebody who has gone through pregnancy or is a mother should be a part of writing this policy or reviewing this policy. If you're looking at LGBT inclusive policies, you need to have a queer person looking at it. If you're looking at disability policies, you need to have a disabled person looking at it. When we have panel discussions or like big things happening within companies, most times we're looking at like a leader being a part of the conversation. Most leaders are men, no offense. Men end up, then capturing a huge part of these conversations. But I think we also need more aspects of representation. Like, I'm very happy about today's representation. But I think we need to have disabled folks as a part of conversations. Hence, passing the mic to women, to non-binary folks, to disabled folks, to neurodivergent folks, so that you are creating a pathway for all kind of experiences and not just one kind of an experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess that makes a lot of sense, because when we are policy makers and we do not have representation around the table, it falls flat, right? And that's why organizations should be very, very careful in selecting that group of folks who are making the changes. With that, I think we have come to an end of this session. I have learned a lot from each one of you, and I'm so happy that I could be a part of a panel which has been passing the mic with such a diverse set of thought. So thank you so much for doing this with us. Any closing note before I let you go and catch your flight?
So I'm terribly late for my flight, but I thought the conversation was free-flowing, very interesting. I'm glad we're talking about demographics beyond gender. I did learn a few things myself, and Thank you, Priyankar, for holding this conversation together and bringing in the right points for all of us to hear and learn from. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you.